Welcome back to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. My name is Sarah. Today, I'm very excited to bring you an interview with Dr. Stacy, who is a naturopathic doctor that doesn't go the typical naturopathic doctor route of testing and supplements. She takes an approach that implements circadian biology, becoming insulin sensitive, controlling for blood sugar, and can actually look at lab tests to tell you that you have circadian disruption or a cortisol melatonin issue, which I think is very valuable for people and gives you the proper lifestyle and nutrition tools rather than a long list of supplements to take. So if you've noticed, I don't really have a ton of people on the show that do this testing and supplements sort of a thing. I really like to talk about addressing nutrition, specific nutrients, minerals that we need to make sure we have enough of, and lifestyle and blood sugar, those types of things. That's what I like to bring to my community because I think it's much more valuable when we can look at our health through that lens rather than what I say is kind of putting lipstick on a pig of the typical model of, hey, you have this thing that is low, let's supplement it. So all of that being said, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation with Dr. Stacy. Make sure you check out all of her links in the show notes if you want to work with her or check out some of her courses. And I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. If you've been listening to the show for the last few years, you know I'm a huge fan of red light therapy. There are over 10,000 studies now in publication showing the health benefits of red light therapy. And there is a lot of research showing how red light therapy can help to improve skin health. I have been on the fence about trying one of the red light therapy face masks, and I've definitely been waiting to find one that uses the specific frequencies that actually show improvement with skin health. 630 nanometers for red and 850 nanometers for near infrared. And Bond Charge checks off all of those boxes. So I've been trying this mask out for the last month and I absolutely love it. It's super lightweight. It does not make your face sweat and it's very simple to use. All you need is 10 minutes. You can actually use my code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% off at Bond Charge. You can use it on any of their products, but I really, really like their red light therapy face mask. And I think it's something that's worth a try if you're looking to naturally improve your skin health. So check it out. Again, use code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% over at Bond Charge. If you're anything like me, I avoided olive oil for years and years due to a lot of the talk around olive oils not really being what they say they are and not really finding a brand that I can trust in the store. The problem with a lot of store-bought olive oils is that number one, they can be cut with seed oils, which we do our best to avoid at all costs. And the polyphenol content has also a lot of the time been degraded because it's been sitting on the shelf for years and years, and there may not be any polyphenols left in the product. That's why I have been using and really enjoying Paleo Valley olive oil, and they ensure they have the highest quality product and fresh pressed olive oil. It's been tested and shown to contain high levels of polyphenols. The olives are handpicked and cold pressed within hours of harvesting to ensure the best quality and the highest polyphenol levels. This is going to result in a much higher concentration of these beneficial compounds compared to standard olive oils. They're also not cut with any seed oils, so you can really trust that you're getting the best high quality product for you and your family. If you want a special savings on the Paleo Valley olive oil, head to the link down in the show notes to get a special discount. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am so excited to bring my friend Dr. Stacy here to the podcast. I've been following her on Instagram for a long time, and we just had like a whole podcast before the podcast about all the things. And she's definitely somebody that I feel like puts out really good information. And she's one of the very few naturopathic doctors that I think really gets it when it comes to understanding the full picture. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for that intro. I'm excited to chat about all the things.
Yeah. Well, let's just give the community a little bit of your backstory history, and then we can see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, for sure. I always try to do the express version because it's long, right? But like, very similar to your story, all of the things that we experience that we can now teach and help others pull out of it or even avoid it, right? And so that's kind of always my goal. But for me, my issues started at a very young age. Um, but it's funny how the cycle started really just of a dairy sensitivity that turned into chronic ear infections, which turned into lots of antibiotics, right? Affecting the gut, and then here we go. And then I suffered from debilitating anxiety, which was stemming from the gut, but also blood sugar, because I'm a child of the 90s, that sugar was in everything. Everything
Fat-free,
was
everything.
processed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Snackwells by the
Yes.
sea.
Yes. Yes. And so it was, environmental for sure. But debilitating anxiety from those are my first memories, which is pretty crazy, but it's one of my favorite things to help support people out of, because when you support the right things, anxiety shuts off really quickly. So I love that. But it just kind of escalated as I got older. And then, of course, you bring in the hormonal issues, and I had breast implants. And so there was that aspect of things. So implant, explant surgery, lots of things that just all kind of compiled and really, both my parents are MDs. My brother's an MD. So the thing for me that I found the most confusing was like, why don't any of them know what's wrong with me? Right? Like, why am I struggling? I feel like I'm going to die every single day. And like, even like I was VIP for all the doctors and specialists I saw, because they all went to med school together and all this. And like, all I was being given was a pill or a prescription, and just like, oh, just take this. You won't feel a thing. Right. And I'm like, I'd rather feel anxious than not feel anything with my life. And it just kind of got to be that point. I was like, there's got to be a reason why I am dealing this way. None of my other siblings are, right? Like, so it's been my lifelong journey to really understand this trail of events so that I can, like I said, help people avoid it and help people pull out of it who are in the same or similar situation.
I love that. I relate to so much of that too, because I had the same like crippling anxiety as a teenager and in my 20s, and the hormone issues. And it's just like, yeah, that I feel like people are really struggling with these things today as well. And like you mentioned, once you kind of add the right inputs for someone, it's pretty easy to turn off. So maybe we can talk about that, of how you approach things differently than even like a typical functional medicine doctor would.
Yeah, of course. There always is, I think all too often we only are blaming the gut, right? Because the gut is housing our neurotransmitters, but we got to remember that neurotransmitters are also signaled by light, right? And our gut is also signaled by light. So that's a huge missing piece. I also think about blood sugar. Blood sugar is one of the biggest causes of, especially when it comes to panic, right? Or thinking about cyclical anxiety, right? When we know distinctly at times in our cycle that it is happening, that can always be tied to what's happening with blood sugar, hormones, things like that. So I'm always thinking about the light environment. I'm always thinking about blood sugar. And I'm thinking about dopamine and serotonin, right? The lifestyle that we're holding on to this lifestyle that is completely like opposite of our biology. And we wonder why we can't get things in balance, right? Well, when we're getting dopamine hits all day, every day from our blue light or from our influences and our social media and everything else, our true crime shows, and, how will our nervous system ever find balance? So a lot of it is holding on to this lifestyle that is not suited for and not creating an environment for balance.
Yeah. I feel like the modern standard lifestyle is just basically setting people up for chronic disease, anxiety, depression, all of these things that we hear about on social media now. And you and I were just talking about this before we turn on the record, is like, it's like this push to normalize it, to normalize obesity, to normalize anxiety, to normalize depression, to the point where people almost like get triggered if you tell them that they don't have to live that way. It's
Yeah.
astounding, you know?
Yeah, we get into a situation where we're defending our labels and then also
Mm-hmm.
using those labels as a crutch, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it's important to know that we can be addicted to our state, right? Chemically, whether we realize it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we can be terrified to lose that identity because then we don't know who we are, right? It's the unknown, the unfamiliar, which is the scariest thing if you're stuck in survival. So there is such a normalization of a lot of things that really should not be normalized, right? And you don't want to accept that as your normal because life is so much better when you are the absolute best version of yourself, right?
Agree. It's like going from, 1950s TV to like high def when you really understand how to, I think, make some pretty simple changes. People think it has to be super complicated, and maybe we could talk about that because you work differently than a lot of other practitioners as well. That I really appreciate your viewpoint, but I think people look at alternative medicine and functional medicine and they assume they're going to have to start these like rigorous supplement protocols and detoxing. And, you know, I love your message because it's not, you don't really see it as complicated that way for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did at one point. I really was into that, like, oh yeah, okay, we got to suppress this, we got to boost this, and let's do. And I get how it's easy to fall victim to that. And it most people, their intention is truly to help people, and this is what we're being sold as what helps people, but it's truly just green medicine when you
Mhm.
are switching your prescriptions for supplements, right? And remember too, the liver has to break down every one of those supplements. It could be counteracting other things. It's a lot of stress. And remember your mitochondria too. Anytime you have symptoms, your mitochondria is struggling. And so by adding in a lot of exogenous substances, that's only going to create more stress, struggle, and inflammation on the mitochondria. So I do use functional testing because, and most of the reason why is because of the mind body connection, just like
Mhm.
blood sugar data, right? It's a mind body connection. When you can visibly see and you have this visual, we are a see it to believe it society, and you see, oh gosh, maybe I should change my inflammatory diet because my gut is a hot mess, right? Or maybe I do need to think about meal timing because I now see that my blood sugar is doing a roller coaster at night. And you've taught me that you can't balance that, anything if your blood sugar is unbalanced at night. So it's truly creating that visual and that mind body connection, because I could tell people all day long, don't eat oatmeal in the morning, do this and do
Yeah.
that. But when they have the visual to back up what I'm saying to them, it does create a different connection. And so I think this overcomplication of the supplements and the labs and the things like that detracts people from the simplistic changes that need to happen, but those are also the most profound. It's kind of
Mhm.
like, I'm going to hold on to this label and this supplement because I don't want to change my lifestyle.
Mhm.
And when in all reality, that's all you need.
Right. And the whole like oatmeal thing and the good foods versus bad foods and the diet culture and this, that, and the other, when you just can like step back from all the noise and
Mm-hmm.
actually look at it through this lens of like circadian biology, leptin, blood sugar balance, like it's just noise. Like, okay, you want to have oatmeal in the morning? Have it. Let's put a CGM on you. Let's strap it on you.
Yeah.
See how your body responds to that oatmeal in the morning. Maybe you'll be okay. Maybe you'll have nice, stable energy, stable levels through the day. But if you are metabolically unhealthy, probably not. And if you really
Mm-hmm.
want the data, then like let's look at it, because there's too much of like overgeneralization, I think, in the alternative health community. Oatmeal's bad and fruit is bad and this is bad and that's bad. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, are you metabolically healthy?
Right.
Is it the middle of the summer? Like, there's so many factors that go into these topics, but that's not sexy on social
Right.
media. All to just be like, well, oatmeal may not be the root of all of your problems. But it
Right.
might not be wise to be eating if you have a metabolic issue, right?
1,000,000%. And those are usually the people who are clinging to it that are from that 20-year-old, 20 years ago, we were talking about, oh, oatmeal's great, right? It's like got fiber and all this
I
stuff. And you
grew
just
up
mix your
eating
protein
it.
powder, right? You mix your protein powder in it or your egg whites. It's just like, no, that was 20 years ago. And I know that a lot of people check out because they're like, oh, I can't keep up. There's all the, but for me, I'm
It's
like,
yeah.
anytime new information comes in, I'm like, oh, well, that's why it doesn't work for this person. Or, you know what I
Mhm,
mean? You're
mhm,
making connections and you're realizing it's like, you do have to shift as our environment is shifting. You can't
mhm.
hold on to 20-year-old knowledge and expect the same result.
No, and I think again, like kind of zooming out and looking at the body through this lens of like your metabolic health, your level of leptin sensitivity, the seasonality, the circadian nature of hormones, the gut, your body, like all of these things, it really helps to simplify the conversation a little bit more. Like I saw this influencer a week ago. He's pretty popular. He has a calorie counting app, of course, and promotes calorie counting. And he's like, I'm going to eat ice cream at midnight and I'm not going to get fat. Look at me.
Oh,
I'm eating
mm.
ice cream at midnight and I'm not getting fat. See, you can do it too. It's all about being in a calorie deficit. And I'm like,
Oh,
OMG.
that's cute. That's really cute. Yeah.
Because I could literally throw papers at you all day that show gut function shuts down at night. We don't make as much stomach
Yes.
acid, digestive enzymes are like all these things that the gut needs to digest this food should be asleep. They're not operating as they should. Your insulin sensitivity is super low at night. Like, okay, yeah, be in a calorie deficit, fine, cool, but like it's not going to exempt your body from biology and the way that it actually works. And this is really bad advice to be giving people to tell them they could eat ice cream at night and lose weight. Like, why, you know?
That's the thing, but there's going to be people out there that that's what they want to hear. And they're like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to just go back to this calories in, calories out, because that's what was ingrained to us for such a long time.
So
But
long.
you and I know the female body is quite different, right? All these studies are based on, not to say that that's healthy for any male, but I
Hmm.
coach a lot of ex bodybuilders, ex fitness,
Mm.
competitors and things like that. I coach them out of insulin resistance because they were over consuming. And this is one reason why I found you, because you put up a reel about overconsumption of protein. I was like, yes, that's what I've been wanting to
Ah,
say. But it's one of those things I'm kind of not scared to put out there, but I'm just not ready for the backlash at this point. So I
it's
talk
bad.
about it. Yeah, it's really bad, right? And we've talked about that too, the comments and
The
um
bros coming out of the woodwork.
yes, yes, but it's funny. It's funny, but it's not. But it's like, okay, well, these men are also having to take TRT because all their
Hmm.
testosterone is converting over to estrogen, or their human growth hormone is so suppressed at night, right? Because they're eating so often, they're over consuming protein. And so it's just, like I said, it's this 20-year-old data that now we're seeing the repercussions of doing these things. And you got to change because it's
Hmm.
clear that it's not working. It's clear that it is causing insulin resistance in people. And people are still saying, oh, only eat the egg whites, only eat lean protein. And I'm just like, and they're like, why can't I build my hormones? And I'm like, you're eating 30 grams of protein or fat a day. What do you think
Right.
hormones are built out?
Cholesterol, my friend. Like mitochondria need cholesterol to make pregnenolone. It's the whole,
Yeah. It
yeah,
won't go away because it sells. You know what I mean? It's going to
right.
keep people repeat customers. And I'm telling you, the caloric deficit it might work for you once. It might work for you once and for a temporary amount of time, but it'll come and
Hmm.
it's just going to downregulate your metabolism the whole time.
Hmm. Exactly. And that the protein thing is out of control right
Out
now.
of control. And there's even like doctors who are pretty big influencers and things like that are still pushing this ridiculous amount of protein
Right.
and tracking that. And I'm just like, I mean, everybody has to learn in their own way, right? I'm not saying
Yeah.
like my way is
Yeah.
the only way. I believed these things years ago too. I did. I
Mhm.
really did. But I also was 40 pounds overweight. I was force feeding myself protein. And the
Mhm.
thing is like if you were getting your protein from whole food sources, you would not be eating that much protein. So, they're
Mm-mm.
turning to powders and bars and things like that to get it. And it's not the same
Yeah.
effect.
No. It's not, let's pour these powders in our coffee and make
Yeah.
shakes and then
Right.
add powders to our eggs. And it's like, you are bringing your insulin levels up, like this
Yes.
is causing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was, I started kind of seeing there that you could have too much of a good thing when I was doing carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
Carnivore had helped me tremendously with a lot of gut issues and anxiety, depression, like so many things were just like disappearing. I think it's because my blood sugar was a lot more stable, albeit
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of carnivore when I was doing too much protein, blood sugars were like 90s, low 100s all the time. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
right. And I was seeing that with clients too, because I was doing a lot of carnivore coaching and I was seeing like people just eating like a ridiculous amount of protein because they were carnivore. And that's like basically what your diet is protein,
Right. Yeah.
and getting like pre-diabetic numbers. And they're
Yep.
like, well, so and so carnivore influencer said that this is normal. I'm like, it's never normal to have pre-diabetic numbers. Like, I don't care
Right.
what diet you're eating.
Right.
It's not normal. I don't care what protein scientist, whoever says is normal. Like, pre-diabetic is pre-diabetic. That's leptin resistant. Like, that's a metabolic issue. You're going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
So you got to step
And you're,
back from the dogma and this popular
yes.
trend and like look at what's on paper, like for real.
And your body's clearly showing you, like, if you're inflamed, you can't lose weight, you know what I mean? All these things, and your markers are not where they should be optimally. That's your body saying, hey, this isn't suiting you. But then we
Right.
have this mentality to like, oh, well, we just have to add in more hit, or we just got to keto more, or whatever it is. And it's like,
Few more steps. You got to do 30,000
yeah,
steps a day.
yeah, bump it up, girl. That's the only way. And it's like, no, we can't. It's not that complicated. It shouldn't be that hard. And just imagine if you did lose weight in that way, how hard would that be to hold on to?
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you going to walk 30,000 steps a day for the rest of your life? Like,
because
I'm
you're going to
sorry.
have to. Yeah.
Hey, to maintain this, like you're going to have a high level of activity and fitness in order to maintain what you've done. And like the thing I love about just seeing your body through this lens of like leptin resistance and circadian biology is like, this is the easiest maintenance I've ever had in my life of staying lean. I'm leaner now than I was in high school, which is like
Yep.
for a 45-year-old woman, that's just pretty insane,
Right.
and it's like, what did I do? I stopped complicating everything.
Yeah.
You stop like, well, it's too many calories of this, and you have to get like, this is your protein goal, and it's got to be this. And it's like, no, like, let's just step back for a moment and see what actually would make sense in nature. Like
Mm-hmm.
the more and more we go against that, the harder it is for the body uh to have good results, to avoid disease, to avoid
Yeah.
metabolic dysfunction.
And you're going to be micromanaging and like measuring and weighing out almonds the rest of your life. You know what I mean? That's no life to live. And then you
Mm-mm.
don't trust your body's cues. Because if
Right.
you have hunger, I had somebody the other day who was like, um, yeah, I've really been fighting those carb cravings the week before my cycle. And I'm like, why are you fighting
Why?
them? You're supposed to be eating more carbs the week before your
Yeah.
cycle. You know what I mean? That's how we build progesterone. And so
Right.
learning that there's a reason why, right? Learning to trust those cues. But a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
just aren't taught that, and they are
Mm-hmm.
disempowered and they feel like, oh, this is a willpower thing. It's like, well, sometimes it's a blood sugar thing, sometimes it's a hormone thing. Sometimes it's just the lighting in your environment. You've been behind the
Mm-hmm.
screen all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the more you know, and that's why my goal is really, I never thought I would be like a teacher ever. Like I never, and now I homeschool and teach groups. It's just like, what? But the more you understand the why behind what you're supporting, the more likely you're going to actually like make these
Implement.
changes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that education is so important. Like, what if you just tell someone put on blue blockers at night, they're going to be like, why? Because that's what I
Yeah.
would see, the people in the blue blockers. And it's so funny now, like, it just, social media is just a wild place. I have to limit my time there, but
Yeah.
there's a thing now where people are like, oh, this person on this reel is wearing the yellow colored glasses, that discredits them immediately. And I'm like, really? Like that's a thing people are doing now. If they see
Wow.
somebody wearing blue blockers on a reel, then they immediately say, oh, this clown is wearing the tinted glasses. And I'm like, well, do you even know what those are for? Do you even know what
Oh
that's
my
about?
gosh.
Do you even know how light signals your hormones? Like
Oh
you,
my gosh.
because now we're just going to make it a thing. Now we're just going to make it like, oh, this person's a clown because they're wearing blue blockers. I'm like, do you even know what those are for? Like, if you
Yeah,
educate someone on the risk of hormonal cancers, diabetes, Alzheimer's, like metabolic diseases, obesity, and blue light at night, this is very well documented in the literature. Like, it's on Google right now. It is for now anyway. You
for
can go
sure.
Google it, and now it makes sense as to why this person might want to protect themselves from artificial light. I personally,
Yeah.
obviously, like blue light in my studio. I'm going to go outside and balance with sunlight. I'm recording in the
Hmm.
middle of the day. I would never do this at night. Like,
Right.
it's educating people and giving them the information as to like,
Hmm.
why do you care about your blood sugar? Why would you care about artificial light at night? How does this make sense in the scope of your health, rather than just telling them oatmeal's bad? Oatmeal's
Right.
going to kill you. Stop
Right.
eating kale. Like,
Right. Right.
okay, like
Well, those are
no.
just fear. It's just fear in
Mhm.
the alternative sphere. Anything derivative of fear, I don't want anything to do with, because fear is the worst
Oh,
toxin of all, right? You're going to make
agree.
terrible decisions and you're going to stay in survival. And
Hmm.
so when you're empowered and you're like, oh, now I understand how this change might support my health, or how looking at blood sugar might support me, I can change that. That
Hmm.
is where the magic happens, right? When you feel empowered, instead of just like, oh, yeah, I have Lyme, I'll have it forever. And,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
you're a victim to your circumstance once again. Hmm.
Right. A lot of people are quick to talk about the benefits of sunlight, but what gets often missed in the conversation is the benefit of darkness and the importance of protecting yourself from blue and green light after sunset. That is why I choose Viva Rays as my go to source for protecting my circadian rhythms. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% off at Viva Rays. Now, you may have seen some of these studies popping up. I call them fear mongering about blue blockers not being effective. And that is a partial truth, because when you use blue blockers that are clear or that have not been tested with a spectrometer to actually block what they say they do, they will not protect your circadian rhythms. And they are not catching those key wavelengths that you need to be blocking in order for your body to be able to repair, for you to make melatonin, which is a master antioxidant. And artificial light at night has been in the scientific literature extensively linked to a host of hormonal cancers, obesity, diabetes, and all sorts of metabolic issues. That again is why I choose Viva Rays as my go to source for protecting my circadian rhythms to allow my body to get adequate darkness at night. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva Rays, and you can actually trust that they block the frequencies of light that they say they do. Thanks to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's podcast. Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit before we turned on the camera about my daughter. And when she was going through like a serious health crisis a year ago, we're still not out of the woods.
Hmm.
But that's why I've been in the molecular hydrogen world and digging in that rabbit hole, because I had a resonance feeling about hydrogen being a potential solution to help my daughter, because I was told she's got Lyme, she's got mold, she's got parasites, she's got EBV. She has all these viruses and all these problems, and it's all here on the testing. So we're going to have to just go through this extensive detoxing protocol and this, that, and the other. And I was like, unsubscribe.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what every bit of my body was just like, unsubscribe. Like, no,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
not to say that she isn't affected and that her mitochondria is not needing support and the host needs support and help.
Right.
Um, that is a thing. However, I wasn't going to allow these like labels to define her. I certainly wasn't going to share this information with her.
For
But as her
sure.
mother, I was like, okay, well, there's an issue with her blood brain barrier. Molecular hydrogen can cross the blood brain barrier. Maybe we're going to
Hmm.
invest in that and go down that rabbit hole. And I haven't done the functional testing because it is so darn expensive.
Yeah.
But a year later now, I mean, it was 9/11 last year. She had a grand mal seizure in my living room. I remember it vividly. And then she went on to have another one the subsequent month, until we started implementing these things. It's terrifying,
Yeah.
people that have these conditions with their health. It is terrifying. It is a very scary place to be in. And if you go down the medical rabbit hole, you feel very disempowered,
Mm-hmm.
scared. But here we are a year later, photobiomodulation, hydrogen therapy, things, a ketogenic diet, things that we have
Mm-hmm.
done. And she is able to go back to school. We had to pull her completely out of school. She had to spend a week in the ICU. I mean, it's like it's a different
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that part of that is like choosing not to allow these labels to be personified and like to take them on and to own them. And that's such a
Yes.
hard thing for people because, as again, we were talking, had a podcast before the podcast. It's almost, and I don't want to like make anybody feel a certain way, but if you want to, people hide behind a diagnosis and they hide behind a label and they use it as sometimes a reason to not um, do the basic stuff. I don't know. I would love to hear your take on
Yeah,
that.
there's a lot of different ways that I look at this, and when I first started learning in college, it was psychology because I was wondering, I thought was thinking about that aspect of anxiety, but the more I got into, the more I just want to understand why people do what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we we want to label because it is validating to our experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we also keep that label because it's our only identity we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we are getting connection with our loved ones because we have this really big problem, right? Maybe it's giving us a feeling of significance or whatever
What
it
are we
may
getting
be.
from it? Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And I know that sounds, I don't want it to sound like it because I've been there too. Like I definitely
Same.
have been there too. And so, I loved my labels at first because it made me feel like I was being heard and that,
I have a
okay, there is an
reason to
actual
feel this
problem.
way.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. But our words create and our thoughts and our beliefs create our current reality. And the more we are labeling ourselves and other people that we are um, we are embodying that. So it's no longer like I have Lyme, I'm Lyme disease, right? And your
Mm-hmm.
cells
Mm-hmm.
are tuning in to your thoughts and creating more of the same. And I just think it's really important to know that you can't, just like you can't, solve a problem with the same mind that created it, right? You also can't heal your body in the same mindset, the same thinking that allowed you to get sick in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. Like the whole system has to shake. The whole system has to change. The rug has to be taken out from under you, unfortunately for most people. But the good news is, I feel like the good news is anyway, it doesn't always have to be as complicated as we're led to believe, kind of going back to the original conversation of like a lot of the whole functional medicine movement is a little bit like lipstick on a pig, because I went down that route originally with my daughter. Because of
Mm-hmm.
course we got all these alternative diagnoses. The neurologist was just like, it's autism. She was having these violent rages, and they're like, well, you're just going to have to institutionalize her, because a lot of kids get to the puberty and they start getting violent like this and they just have to be put in homes. And I was like, she's
No.
sick. Like she's
Yeah.
sick. Something's wrong that's making her brain inflamed. Like I'm not going to just, if she goes to a home and I don't figure out what's wrong with her, she's going to die. Like, do you understand
Mm-hmm.
that? And we're like, well, no, this is just what happens with a lot of kids like her. And I'm
Oh,
like, but what, like, but why, like
yeah.
what, why is nobody asking why?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we went down this like, okay, you need to take 30 supplements. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again,
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that turns a lot of people away from alternative medicine. It's cost prohibitive,
Yep.
and it's like just taking something instead of a medication. Now you're
Yep.
taking 30 supplements 3 times a
Yep.
day and handfuls of pills all day. And it's like,
And you're still
again,
holding on to your labels, you're still holding on
yes,
to your H. pylori and, your all your other labels, your parasites, your mold, things like that. But it's important to know that those things can only exist in a body that, or in an environment that will allow it to, right? So we have our
yes.
internal environment and our our home, our external environment, and also our environment as far as nature, our connection or disconnection from nature that we have to be thinking about. It's so much more than just trying to hack our way by supplementing ourselves out of this. We can't supplement out of it. We have to
Mm-hmm.
connect back. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things. I think truly it's a loss of connection, but most of that is connection to our own intuition. And this is why we are wanting labels and we're wanting people to tell us what to do, because we've lost that. And our environment is designed to keep us away from our intuition. And so when we
Yes.
lose that inner guide, of course we're lost. Of course we want a label. Of course we want somebody to tell us what to do, because we have no idea. And there's so much information and noise out there, it paralyzes us.
Yes, that's what I get a lot of, and I'm sure you do too, is the person who's been told you've got H. pylori, you got parasites, you've got mold, and they're just like so terrified from being told this. And there's so much information out there. They're like, well, I've been told I need to do this detox and I need to take these supplements and I need to take antibiotics and I need to take this, that, and the other. And so, like, how do you support that person that comes to you in your practice? Like, what's the like education obviously, but how do you kind of coach that person to get onto the other side?
Yeah, for sure. Well, when I first tell them, like, I need you to come off all these supplements, that is usually, well, sometimes it's a sigh of relief, and then sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, but wait, like, what's gonna like, everything's gonna fall apart. I'm like, okay, if everything falls apart when you come off these supplements, they weren't helping you. They were
Right.
muting your symptoms, right? Like that, we have to know what's working. I don't want you to be on anything that you don't know what we're supporting and how it's supposed to be feeling. And if you're not feeling it, I want you to come off of it, right? That's how
Mm-hmm.
we support things. But we have to, it's getting them out of these alert states, right? Like, so hydrating the body, remineralizing the body, getting cellular hydration up, increasing their energy potential, because we
Mm-hmm.
know that all disease and dysfunction is because we are dehydrated on a cellular level, and then our mitochondria needs help. So how can
Mm-hmm.
we get energy from other sources, right? Because we rely on food only for our energy. So amazingly enough, nature provides energy sources for us to gain these free electrons. So teaching them what is actually happening, why we are actually doing things like grounding and getting sunshine, using sauna, red light therapy, things like that. Um, Teaching them how that is foundational, right? And that is this synergistic relationship we have with nature. And the more we try to block ourselves off from that, the sicker we get. So
Mm-hmm.
making that kind of bridging that gap. Yes, we will support, we will do minerals. Yes, we will eventually, but it's always like, let's build your foundation and then see how much detox we really need to do, because you might
Yep.
be surprised how much hormones balance themselves out when you are balanced with your circadian rhythm, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
when you get
Detox
your
pathways open up.
right. When you start teaching your body what it's, or creating an environment where your body does what it knows how to do and heal itself, and getting your structured water up so that that is pushing out toxins on its own, then you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go into these heavy chelation therapies and things like that, right? You're fixing from the foundation up.
Yeah, because when you're pulling out things from those sorts of detoxes, you can pull out a lot of good things as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it can
Yeah.
really make people even more sick that I'm seeing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you have to be thinking about supporting the mitochondria the whole time, because that's what's in charge of all of these processes, right? That's
Mhm,
the energy
mhm.
uh, producers, which I feel like is such a minute piece of what the mitochondria actually does for us, but that's what we understand.
Right, right, agree. What are your thoughts on the whole, like, SIRS mold thing? Because that is exploding right now, and I always like to ask different practitioners their thoughts on it, and again, I know you probably support it similarly to everything you just said, but,
Yeah,
uh,
I think a
yeah.
lot of times the histamine, and I don't think people understand a lot of that is due to histamine issues. Histamine is
Mm.
very much triggered by dehydration, right? A lack of
Mhm.
mineralization. And I also think it's important to know that like even mold toxicity, what it does to leptin, right? Like
Yes.
that is a connection that is not often made, right? So
Yep. And I'll
a
get
lot
people
of
that
people,
are like, they're like, oh, I read on this mold practitioner's page that until I detox from mold, I can't get rid of leptin resistance. And the mold is what's making me leptin resistant. And I'm like, false. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's like a one-third truth. So
Right,
anything that's like
right,
a partial truth is a lie. That is
right,
false. Like, yeah.
right.
So maybe you talk to that a little bit because you're one of the only people that I think understands there is leptin mold connection, but how you can treat it, correct?
Right. That doesn't mean that, oh, you just jump into a mold detox, you know, and remember too, like mold is a problem because non-native EMFs, right? That's what causes mold to proliferate in our environment, right? Our external
Mhm.
environment or internal environment. I would be thinking more along the lines of the mitochondria and cellular hydration before I would be thinking about mold detox, right? Or restoring
Mhm.
the cell membrane before we are jumping into a mold detox program. But I think so often we're told, oh, mold makes us fat. So once we
Yep.
detox the mold, we'll lose. And it's like, no, there's a lot of other things you need to be considering in your environment. And also, you know, yes, it does impact your insulin and your blood glucose. So that has to be something that you can actively work on, right?
Mhm.
Before you have to
Mhm.
get to the place of detoxing mold. Because mold gets kind of pissed when you start to detox. So, you know, you don't want to jump straight into that.
No, that's not the first thing you do. And then,
No.
yeah, it's build your cellular hydration, support the mitochondria so they not only make more water, but they're also able to hold on to more water. The cell has
Mm-hmm.
enough healthy voltage to keep those things out in the first place and to push
Mm-hmm.
the things out that don't belong there. And then if it's still a problem, but you've got the foundations down, you've had them down, then maybe do some sort of like a gentle detox. I'll have people start with like Epsom salt baths, maybe do castor oil pack, sauna, take a Takasumi binder along with that if they really want to
Mm-hmm.
detox. And then if that's not helping, then maybe go do something a little bit more guided with a practitioner who understands how to do it. But if you're not foundationally supported, it's just going to be a
Right.
nightmare, I think.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's important to think about the what the mycotoxins are doing in the body versus just always killing, 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 right? And so thinking about the bile flow, thinking about the cell membrane, all of those things need support before you push any sort of, you know, detox effort for sure.
Definitely. So, do you support those things nutritionally, or are there some different things that you use to help support somebody to, increase cell membrane health, those types of things?
Yeah, I do like to make sure that people are getting adequate amount of, you know, essential fatty acids in their diet, right? That
Mm.
is super,
Lipids,
super
yeah.
important.
Mm.
Yes. You know, bitters, of course, for bile stimulation, gastric flow, things like that. Which a lot of people, you know, are we have these chronic gut issues and we have these
Mhm.
pH issues. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is the supplements also throw your stomach pH, right? Like they are affecting your pH. And so if you have this chronic gut issue and you're on 30 supplements, you're working against yourself in that way. You're never going to have an appropriate pH in your stomach, right?
Right.
So doing things like that. I do work with binders. I love Cellcore's binders because I love the carbon technology. To me, it is beyond any other, you know, binding capacity. So we do work in those as needed. But like I said, you have to build the foundation up before that's even a thing. But when you can combine a binder like that with a sauna therapy and you know what you're doing and you know how you're supporting things, that can be super helpful. But I don't jump into like my baseline supplementation is generally like let's get minerals up, right? Let's
Mhm.
support digestion, whatever's needed as far as bitters or enzymes or something like that, and then let's work in the lifestyle components and then see what's left, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of talk about stomach acid, enzymes. Um, how, do you, I'm still like the jury's still out. Like what percentage of people do you think have low stomach acid, or do you think it's more of a low enzymatic issue, or both for people?
I don't, it's hard because you don't know how much of that is just driven from their diet, right? Like how,
Mhm, mhm.
how much of it is just they eat a very acidic diet. How much of it is that they don't give digestion a rest long enough
They're
overnight
eating all
to,
day, yeah,
right,
mhm.
right. So I think it has to be individualized, right? Are they truly low stomach acid, or is it really just all these lifestyle components that are working against them having adequate digestion? You know,
Yep, yeah,
usually
I
a
agree,
combination of both, right?
I agree. Yeah, it's it's multifaceted,
It
and
really is.
yeah. And you talk a lot about hormone balance, and that's definitely a big topic with my community as well. And I recently did a post about estrogen, like as we get older in our mid 40s and beyond, and menopause, estrogen begins to drop. This can make us less insulin sensitive, more prone to weight gain, all kinds of other stuff. And I've seen a lot of functional medicine doctors talking more and more about this. And it's estrogen. You need to replace estrogen. You need this. And then I'll look in the comments underneath these posts of women. They're like, yeah, I went on estrogen and I didn't lose any weight. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we're getting this message so twisted. So I would love to hear your
Mm,
take on hormone shifts and how we support a person in that stage of life.
yeah, such a good topic. So I think it's important to put out there that menopause is not a disease, right? It is the
You.
natural
Thank you. And
fluctuation of
perimenopause too.
hormones.
All the
Yes.
freaking fear posting on perimenopause. Y'all, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be so
It
bad.
doesn't have to
You
be
know,
that bad. And just like we were talking, our words create, right? If we think it's going to suck, guess what? Guess what we're setting ourselves up for, you know? Um
mhm.
it is, women have been going through this for since the beginning of time, right?
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
supplementing. The reason we feel like we need to supplement is because we are unwilling to change, right? We're
Mhm.
unwilling to change and shift. And the reason why perimenopause and menopause are so abrasive right now is because they're shedding light on imbalances that weren't addressed before we got to that
Before
point, right?
before you
The
got to that
insulin
point, you had
issues.
PCOS,
Yes.
you had
Yes.
all these other hormonal issues before you got to
Yes.
perimenopause.
Yes. Yes. And for me, I'm like, how disempowering for someone to tell me you just need to be on estrogen the rest of your life. I
Yeah.
would feel much more empowered to be like, well, your insulin sensitivity is changing. Let's see where your new, carb tolerance is. Not to say no carbs, right? You still want to be
Right.
cyclical with them, even as a
Right.
postmenopausal female.
Agree.
Um, but we're so disempowered, and it's just like, what's the end goal? And that's what I always ask somebody if they come to me. They're on hormone replacement therapy that isn't working, right? It's never
Mhm.
working. They feel like,
Mhm.
and placebo effect says 33% of women, it's going to do something, right? Temporarily,
Mhm.
at least.
Mhm.
Um, and they come to me, and it's not really moving the needle on anything. Sometimes even adding, I'm like, okay, you're adding in progesterone, the
Mhm.
pregnancy hormone, and you wonder why you're not losing weight, right? You know how we feel when progesterone's high. Don't you think that that's going to have, be a little counterintuitive with
Yeah.
your weight loss goals? Absolutely it
Yes.
will.
Mhm.
Absolutely it will.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's just very disempowering. And I always ask them, what is your end goal? Do you want to be on these forever? Like, is that
Mhm.
what you want? And even more of a call to look at what's happening with cortisol and insulin and leptin, because when our body's preferring the adrenal, stress hormones, you are
Mhm.
no longer making the sex hormones. So just a call, right? To look at those things instead.
And the body has other ways of making these hormones besides the ovaries. So when the ovaries stop,
Mm-hmm.
we have other ways, and not just the adrenals. There's other receptors in the
Yes.
body. There's other places we can make these hormones.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and and people always are like, "Are you for or against HRT? Like, give me your hard stance." And I'm just like, I'm not gonna do that.
No,
But
no.
I don't know about you. I have seen, honestly, it go both ways. Like the people who I've seen have a quote unquote good experience, they have really optimized the fundamentals, their blood sugar, their diet, their light
Mm-hmm.
environment. They've
Mm-hmm.
really done the groundwork. And then
Yeah.
they do a little bit of HRT and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. On the flip
Mm-hmm.
side, which is the majority of what I see, is a lot of women that are like, don't have these things optimized. They maybe went into perimenopause and menopause with PCOS, with these
Mm-hmm.
other hormone imbalances, and then they get magnified and they get worse as they get into this stage of life. The weight gain is piling on, the anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And the HRT, I've seen it for women in that position create a cortisol issue,
Yep.
create other hormonal issues, just things get even worse. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear what you see in your practice.
I see that often. And I also see that what terrifies me is that these HRT, replacements are being based on blood work, right? Blood work when our
Mhm.
hormones pulse all throughout the day, but all throughout our cycle as well, right? And so
Mhm.
you're getting this 1 millisecond of the day, basing a
Mhm.
prescription on for something that's going to last you 30 days, and you don't even know what your body, what, like, let's just say estrogen. If you're favoring the 4OH, the carcinogenic pathway, and you're taking estrogen replacement, that is playing with fire, right? I think
Yes.
it's really, really important to look at your Dutch, make sure that you would even like qualify as a candidate for that, right? Because you don't know which
Mhm.
pathway your body prefers. So I think there's a lot of just, I think it all comes back to that, like, what pill or supplement can I take and still hold on to the lifestyle that I have right
Mhm.
now, right? And
Mhm.
you can't create change in that way. And
Right.
so there are, I even noticed that there are, I rarely am on Instagram, but I noticed that
Smart.
there are influencer doctors that are going through perimenopause and posting about their,
They're pushing it.
or they're pushing it. And I get some, even my own clients are like, well, I like her approach on it. And I'm like, well, I'm not your
Go
girl.
work with
You know what
her.
I mean? I'm not your girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, to me, I would rather, and maybe I'm crazy, but if I know something's going to help me in my health, I'm all in. If I know and I
Mhm.
understand what I'm
Mhm.
supporting and I know that I can be a little bit better, sign me up. I'm doing it. Right. And
Mhm.
that means the lifestyle changes. Anything that makes sense to me in that way, I will not, and I'll update everybody. If I ever change my mind, I'm never going to do it, because I was put on estrogen and progesterone when I was 24,
Oh my
because I
gosh.
lost my cycle for 4 years and nobody batted an eye. And so they were trying to recreate a cycle by putting me
Oh
on
wow.
estrogen and progesterone. And so I've already played with that. I'm not going back, right? I know how I felt.
Yeah.
I felt terrible. I was bloated. I was depressed. I will not do that again.
This is what I always say. Like, because I have a lot of women that their testosterone is tanked out. They're busy mothers, they're working full time, their lifestyle is like running their hormones into the ground, literally. Like the
Yes.
pregnenolone is going all through cortisol pathway, not
Mm-hmm.
going to sex steroid hormone path. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to make those hormones because it's all being shunted to the cortisol pathway. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll to replace testosterone or these other hormones that cortisol is basically like stealing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I'm having a major cortisol issue, insomnia, heart palpitations, can't sleep, feel terrible, full of rage. And I'm always like, well, you have to ask yourself. And I'm not like trying to put these people down because they want to get
No.
better, trying to do
Yeah.
things to improve their health. And I want to just like, with love and kindness, be like, your body was down regulating the production of these hormones for a reason.
For a
Like
reason.
when your
Yes.
body down regulates the production of something, it's a protective mechanism. It's doing it as a suppression to protect you from something. And so,
Yep.
what do you think is going to happen if you exogenously add something in? Like, it, it may not go the way that you're expecting it to go. And that can hopefully explain to you why, when you add these things in, you don't feel good. Because, like you said, like when you were in 24 and given these exogenous hormones, there was a reason why your body had gone into this down-regulated hormonal state with no cycle. Like your body was protecting you against something, I'm assuming,
Yep.
right?
Yes, I was very
Yeah.
much overtraining, undernourishing, all these things that was never talked about. None of this was ever talked about. And yeah, so they were trying to synthetically create a cycle for me, and it was just wild. It's just wild
Right.
but when we're desperate, and that's why I say I'm not judging. I've been there. I was desperate
Mm-hmm.
for relief, but that wasn't the answer. And here's the other thing too, of like especially with testosterone, because it's thrown out there so much. You're
Mm-hmm.
usually low in testosterone because it's converting over to estrogen because insulin's
Mm-hmm.
high. So
Mm-hmm.
if you fix the insulin issue, you stop that leak. If you keep taking testosterone, still going to be converting over to estrogen if that's the pathway your body is favoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so men and women, this is happening because insulin is high chronically, right? So it's not just women, but no matter how much testosterone you take, it's still going to end up in that, estrogen pathway if that's what your body's preferring. You're never going to hack it, no matter how much dim you take, right? You got to fix the insulin problem.
Exactly. And that is I think I like about you is when I think I saw you on your stories kind of dissecting someone's Dutch test, and you look at things like artificial light, morning
Mm-hmm.
routines, meal timing, non-need of EMF, lack of outdoor time, lack of grounding as a contributor to this
Mm-hmm.
overall dysregulation of the body. And I think that that is something that not many alternative doctors are looking at. They're just looking at just maybe just the diet if they're
Yeah.
looking at that, right? Like instead
We're
of
not
running,
taught. Mm-hmm.
right.
We're not
Yeah.
taught that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
bottle it up and sell it. And that's what I always say. You can't bottle these things up and sell it. And
Mm-mm.
so you don't hear about them. But these are the things that move the needle the absolute most over any kind of supplement you will ever take, any kind of gut protocol you will do. These are the things that move the needle the most. And I know it sounds too simple, but
Mm-hmm.
remember, just remind yourself, like, am I getting myself in a situation where I am resisting change and just wanting something to fix, wanting a pill to fix my problems, because that will not be a sustainable fix.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I'd love to know your thoughts on GL. So we're talking about hormones. So Dutch test,
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, and you're not huge on doing a lot of exogenous HRT, or is it kind of case by case basis?
um I don't put anyone on hormones. We'll just leave it at
Mm.
that. If
Okay.
anything, I'm helping people support so they can come off of them.
Come off. Yeah. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I typically have people that want to come off that come to me. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the GLP1s and microdosing those? Or do you have an opinion on those?
I I just, gosh, it's like I hate to like blackball myself, on being anti everything.
It's good. I mean, no, I think my community appreciates that though, honestly. Just,
Yeah.
yeah.
For me personally, I think that these things can be supported through lifestyle. I do.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that if we are always looking for that magic button, that magic pill to fix our issues, and we know that those things work because they help with hunger. Well, what else helps with hunger is fixing your leptin pathway and balancing your blood sugar and
Yes.
strategic fasting, right?
Yeah.
Those things to me are so much more empowering than feeling like I have to rely on a pharmaceutical to create this effect in me. And you're always going to have potential of side effects
Hmm.
and other things.
Hmm.
And especially an injection is
Yeah.
way less controllable than a pill. That's just my take on it. I don't
Yeah.
I you know I like to do things that empower me in my health, and I like to
Hmm.
empower my clients, and I don't like them to feel like, oh, you're just deficient with this. If you take this, all your problems will be solved. I like to teach them
Hmm.
how to do these things naturally.
Yeah. I feel the same way. And it's
Okay.
like, yeah, I do.
You
I
never know,
do.
right? Like, but and everyone's entitled to their own journey and their own opinion on these
Hmm.
things. But with the more I learn about the mechanisms of our natural appetite regulating pathway and things like that, the more I'm like, oh, we can do this without, we can do this
Yeah.
internally. I'm all about
Yeah.
it.
And I mean, I have a couple of community members. I mean, I have a lot of community members. Some of them do take HRT. Some of them are microdosing
Mm-hmm.
GLP-1s. And they're like, I feel really good with this. This is working really well for me. I'm combining it with circadian lifestyle and with the
Yes.
leptin am and with the diet. And it's been the thing that's taken me to the next level. And I don't disempower them and say, stop, you're going to kill yourself. I'm like,
yeah,
cool,
you're so weak, right?
let me help continue to support
Yes.
you so that you continue to feel good. Like I will continue to support you through the ways that I know how. You're going to have outside help to get support with those other things. So I'm not going to just like berate you, but on the
Right.
same token, I have community members that have taken the GLP-1s that have gotten thyroid issues, that have gotten gut issues, that have gotten these side effects from using them, or severe muscle loss. Like they've gotten, all of a sudden they have like a ton of cellulite. They're like, whoa, I lost all this weight, but there's no muscle there, and
Yeah.
there's just, we always are so quick to like run to a magic pill, run to the thing, and not to say like, I'm going to just don't ever and never. I am not like someone who speaks in absolutes. I try not to. I try to, meet people where they are and support them from there. But I think we just always have to go back to, does this make sense? And the whole menopause
And is it
conversation,
sustainable, right?
right?
Like it's only
Right.
sustainable if you continue on them. Now, what I will say is that I understand when people need momentum, right? Like I understand, but if you're simply relying on that and not doing the circadian piece, not doing the hormonal piece, and your meal timing's all over the place and insulin's still a wreck, you're going to struggle bus, right? You're going to be the person that's going to gain it all right back. But you can get momentum just with supporting leptin, just with strategic fasting, right? Like, and to me, I know that it's important to get the needle moving for people, because if they're not gonna hang out 2 or 3 months with something if they're not seeing any change, right? So you gotta kind of teach them, like, yes, you should see, if you're doing all the right things, this is how long it will take for you to start seeing the needle move, and it does when you're supporting things in a proper way. But I think a lot of people have just been sold these diet lies and these very I don't know, just cookie cutter situations. And so they've been through this diet train for such a long time. And a lot of them just want to check out, but you got to fix it. You got to fix it. You got to fix that hypothalamic signaling. You got to fix the hormones. And a lot of that is honestly just I would even say you could probably eat in the same way initially to start and just shift your meal timing.
Yep.
And space them out.
People now.
Yes.
I'm like,
and you could get the needle
light
moving.
And your meal timing first.
Yes.
Because I'll get people that come to me like, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, can I do your program? And I'm like, optimally, no, but you can. Optimally, probably not.
Right.
But
right.
to start with, if you're not ready to make a big dietary change, fix your light environment.
Yes.
And fix your meal timing and stop eating 6 times a day. It's going to be hard to do vegetarian and vegan, but like still, you can do.
I've been there too. I've been there too. I was vegan for 6 years. It was part of my journey, right? Like I totally feel that. And I even know why you choose it. I totally understand that. Was I at I was at my absolute worst state of health when I was vegan.
Same.
2 years.
See,
we've all done it.
Lasted 2 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we were 6. It was, it was a lot. But we, and that's why like nothing that we talk about is out of judgment. Say, look, we've been there, we've done it. It's not the answer,
Right.
Yeah.
I think it just all goes back to the foundations, and I love what you do. And I know you do a lot of support. You've got a lot of programs, you do coaching where you can read people's labs. And that's all, like, I'm going to hope people that watch this, I'm not a big lab person. I don't look at labs. I don't draw, like, that's just not me. I'm going to help you with lifestyle and diet, meal timing, light, all of that stuff. But there are people who want that data. They want to like do a Dutch test. They want to see what the heck is actually going on. And that's where I'm going to send people to you, because you can
thank you.
Be like, oh, you've got circadian disruption. Okay. Like you can deduce that. You're not just going to say, oh, we need to just add in these supplements.
Yeah. Let's balance your hormones. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I feel like we could probably talk like another like 2-3 hours.
I know. We need we'll do a recap.
We will. Yeah, absolutely. If anyone's just driving and listening along, like where could they find your programs? Where could they apply to work with you? That sort of thing.
Sure.
What's the easiest way?
Yeah, I just rebranded actually. So my
Oh,
website is dr-stacy.com. And then I only handle one social right now is my Instagram. So it's Dr. Stacy ND. And then I have my podcast, a solo podcast that I do too, just to go more in depth with some things. And then I started doing group programs at the beginning of the year, and I really like it's a different price point for people, which is really
hmm
great. And I realize I can't work one-on-one with every single person. So
yeah.
and even my one-on-ones take them to understand things more in depth. So it's a great way. I do them live so that I keep them small and intimate. And yeah, so it's just another way to work with me.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll make sure I link all that down in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I highly recommend following Dr. Stacy. Like literally every day she posts something. I'm like, I was just thinking that. Like that's
I love it. I
it's
love
just
it so
really,
much.
really good. Oh yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
you and all the work that you're doing. And
Thank you.
I think it's wonderful. We need more practitioners like you. So thank you
Oh,
so much
thank you
for
so
just
much. Thanks for having
yeah,
me.
yeah, it's been awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Just a quick little reminder, this is not medical advice nor meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a healthcare practitioner. And if you enjoy the show, please head on over to Apple or Spotify to leave the show up to a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. I really appreciate you for being here, for listening to the show, and your support means the world to me as I continue to try to pull guests from around the world to bring you informative content to empower you to make decisions about your own health. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.